Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at game number 3 of the 2024 FIDE World Chess Championship being held in Singapore. Now, the match has gotten off to a very surprising start, with Liren leading the match by a score of 1.5 to half after 2 games. And now in this third and very pivotal game, Gukesh is playing with the white pieces. This is the third game in a row, but also the final game before the first rest day of the event. So Gukesh is the white pieces, and as I've mentioned in my previous recap and during my live streams, very important and pivotal game because Gukesh with the white pieces really needs to put pressure on Ding. If he is unable to put pressure on Ding and Ding gets to the first rest day with the lead in the match, having played 2 games with the black pieces and 1 game with the white pieces, his chances are very good in the match. All right, Gukesh with the white pieces, time to go all in. Let's see how the action goes. The game starts out with a move d4 from Gukesh here. Now, this is not really a surprise per se, but it speaks to sort of the difference in the matches that are being played in the post-Magnus Carlsen world, where players are more than happy to experiment. In the previous match, we saw Nepo play e4. I think he played d4 and maybe c4 as well. When Magnus is not playing, players are generally a lot happier to simply, quote-unquote, play chess versus trying to simply try hard with pure preparation. So we get d4. Here, Ding plays the move knight f6, and now we get the move knight f3, and we get d5. Now, one interesting note is that Gukesh plays knight f3 and then c4, as opposed to playing move c4 right here on the second turn. And I think the reason for this is that he might have been a little bit concerned about the possibility of Liren playing the sacrifice here with pawn to e5, d takes, and knight to g4, going into what is known as the Budapest Gambit here. One of Ding's seconds, Richard Rapport, actually has played this quite a few times from the black side. So for that reason, we get the move knight f3. Here we have d5, c4, e6, and now Gukesh trades and he plays the move knight c3. Now we get c6, and here we have the move queen c2 being played. Now in this position, Ding decides to play the move g6 here, trying to go for the move bishop to f5 to attack this queen on the c2 square. Black could play a move like bishop e7, but after bishop to f4, white is going to argue that he has a small advantage in this variation, because after, say, castles in e3, if white gets this setup with the bishop and the queen lined up on the diagonal and the bishop on f4 here, white is simply a little bit better in this Carlsbad pawn structure. So we get g6, and the reason we have g6 here is that what black wants to do is black wants to put his bishop on the f5 square and argue that now with the bishop here, I own the diagonal, you don't own it with your bishop on d3. Additionally, if white plays something like e3, this is still completely fine here after takes and bishop d6, because without the lineup on the diagonal and the wooden shield on d3, black should be completely fine. So after g6, Gukesh plays move h3. This is all prep, by the way. Gukesh is moving instantly up to this point, and now we get the move bishop f5. Here we have queen b3 being played to attack the juicer on b7, and Ding responds with queen b6. Now we get the move g4 here, and this is a very provocative move from Gukesh. He's trying to take advantage of Ding having moved the bishop out early, pushing his pion on the king side to try and take the spatial advantage. Now we get the move queen takes queen, pawn takes, and bishop c2. Now at this point, you might think the players are out of their preparation. You would think this is a little bit obscure, and it's not something that has been played very often, but there was a very famous game that occurred recently in this line between the current Indian #1 and world #3 player Arjun Erigaisi and the former world champion Vladimir Kramnik. Now, Arjun was on the black side of this game, so perhaps he was working on this line with Gukesh. Who knows? We'll probably find out after the match, but there was a very recent topical game in this line. Now here we got the shocking move bishop to f4 being played by Gukesh, and this move is shocking because now you hang the juicer on b3. Now we're still following that famous game between Kramnik and Erigaisi, but here we get this move h5 in the position. Now we get rook g1, takes, and here Ding plays move knight d7. Now what's shocking about this is, let's go back to this moment here. Now at this point in the game when I was doing my live coverage, I was already very concerned for Liren. Once again, he's down half an hour on the clock. We're only on move number 11, and on top of that, unlike in game number 1, this is already an extremely critical position. So we get to this point, and here Ding inexplicably spends 35 5 minutes before playing this move, knight d7. Now, whether Ding was calculating or trying to remember the line, I'm not 100% sure, but he's really following from his footsteps in the first game, where he's using a lot of time early, and he's trusting that once he gets into the middle game or the end game, he will simply be able to find the best moves. Now, one of the big differences between game number 1 and this third game being played is that in this position, you are walking a tightrope here. It's a very, very fine line between completely fine and being much worse, whereas in the French game, if Ding played any number of possibilities when he thought for so long before playing a5, all moves were relatively okay. So we get the move knight d2, and now Ding plays rook g8. Now, what I don't understand about this specifically is that this rook g8 move is the absolute best move in the position here, but why did Ding spend so long on knight bd7? Was he trying to recall the variation with rook g8 and just trying to remember it? What, did he simply not know it? How did he find this? Now, as a former professional chess player turned content creator, my take on this is that Ding probably had not looked at this line before the game. He was trying to remember how it goes, and he vaguely had some idea that after knight d2 there was this rook g8 move, because frankly, without knowing about rook g8, I think it's almost impossible to play this move here, because you're worried about your bishop getting trapped. Say you play a move like a6, there's rook c1, bishop e4, and after f3 it's spaghetti-o time. Your bishop is simply getting trapped. But Ding does find the move rook g8, and it begs the question, why did he spend so much time if he knew this was the correct line? Now, in game number 1, Ding was able to get away with it, but as I was doing my live commentary, unlike game 1, it still feels very tricky here. You're going to be very precise in this situation, and we will see, will this time usage actually catch up with Ding Liren? So now we get the move g5, which is a mistake from Gukesh here. At this point, you can tell that Gukesh is finally out of his preparation. Frankly, I'm a little bit surprised, honestly, they started using time here, because all these moves have been the top computer moves. This position up to h takes g4 already featured in that game between Kramnik and Arjun quite recently. Then we get to the position where knight d7, top computer move, rook g8, top computer move. So it's a little bit surprising that Gukesh was out of his prep here. On the other hand, when you're preparing for a tournament like the Candidates or the World Championship, you're looking at all kinds of different openings, and there's a good chance that Gukesh simply couldn't remember it because he hadn't looked at it today. So now we get g5. Computer does not like this move. It wants a rather strange move, bishop to e3, and the idea is to provoke black into playing g5. Now, the reason that rook g8 makes sense is to go g5 to stop white from pushing, but also you create this backwards diagonal for the bishop to retreat to. So after rook c1, you can play a move like bishop to h7 here, a move like bishop to e4, for example. But at any rate, after f3, your bishop is simply free on the diagonal, and it is not getting trapped. So Gukesh instead plays g5. Now we get knight to h5, bishop to h2, and here Ding plays the move rook h8. Now at this point, it's looking like we're seeing shades of game number 1. We're seeing deja vu all over again, where Ding has turned it around. He spent a lot of time, mind you, but it's looking like he's turned it around. Now he's even a little bit better because he can retreat this knight to the center of the board to start hitting all the pawns. Bishop is free to go back to f5, and already at this point, people were starting to get a little bit concerned about whether Ding was going to win a second game in the first 3 to take a commanding lead in the match. So now we get the move f3 here from Gukesh. Very logical move, by the way, because you want to play for e4, building the big white center. Ding plays the move knight to g7. We get bishop g3, and here we get the big blunder from Ding Liren when he plays this move rook h5. Now, the game has just ended, so we have not seen the press conference, so I can only speculate on what Ding missed when he played this move, but this is a rather shocking decision in my opinion. Here, what I expected was bishop to e7, attacking the pawn, and after bishop f2, this move bishop to f5, e4, and bishop e6. Now, computer gives black a significant advantage here, I think primarily because black is contesting the center. White has a weak pawn on g5 here, and also white has these double pawns on b3 and b2. Now, that being said, however, it's easy when you see the computer evaluation know what's going on versus playing the game. Now, when Ding plays rook h5, I have a theory that what he missed in this game was a move that will be played on move number 21, I think it is, or maybe it's move 23. Don't have the exact order, but I think it's the move knight to e2, as we're going to see shortly. So here we got the move e4 being played, and now Ding Liren is suddenly in a world of hurt because his bishop is getting trapped behind enemy lines. Black no longer can retreat the bishop backwards, and the knights are guarding all these pawns here, and white simply wants to go rook to c1, winning the bishop on the c2 square. So now we get the move pawn takes pawn from Ding. We got pawn takes, and now we have knight e6. Now, what I suspect Ding thought here is that the knight is very active. You can take the pawn to guard the bishop, and black should be fine. So we get rook to c1, knight takes pawn, and now we have bishop to f2, targeting this knight on d4, and Ding plays bishop g7. Now, one thing that's very important to note is that chess changes based on the amount of time you have. General values of pieces, but also the type of play you have in a position can change depending on whether you have 2 hours to think or whether you have 20 minutes to think. And this is a prime example of that, because what Ding saw, I think, in this position is he thought that after takes, and rook g2 here, he's losing the bishop on c2, but after sacking the bishop and going bishop to e3, let's say white goes rook a1 and bishop g5 here, Black now has 3 juicers in return for the horse on b3. You can even blockade here with knight to e5, for example, and Black is actually not even worse in this position. Now, knight e5 might be a specific blunder here, but we'll disregard. The point is that Black gets a blockade in this position. Black is fine here, but the issue is that when Ding went for this, I think what he thought is well, if I get a position like this, it's very simplified here. I can castle, put my king in the center, maybe even go bishop f6, for example. Very easy play without having to spend a lot of time. And I think this is what he thought was completely fine. Now, unfortunately for Gukesh, or for Ding, I should say, he's playing against Gukesh. And as Magnus Carlsen has alluded to in some of his recent comments, Gukesh is an incredible calculator. And in this position, Gukesh is up 40 minutes on the clock here in this position. And because he's up so much time, he has plenty of time to relax, calm the nerves, and he finds the great move in the position, which is knight to e2 here. I suspect that Ding simply overlooked this move. He didn't see it at all. And after this move, Black is in a lot of trouble here. Now, the bishop is still trapped behind enemy lines on c2. The knight covers f3, so you can't go there. And if you trade the knights here after bishop takes e2, the bishop is still trapped. You're losing the bishop. But to add injury to insult, now your rook on h5 is also under attack. So when you move the rook and lose the bishop, now I think you only have 1 pawn for a bishop. And with white having the 2 b's here, white is very much in control and will go on to win the game. So after knight to e2, Ding plays the move knight takes b3, and this is a mistake here for one very simple reason in this position, because after takes in this position, white keeps the 2 b's on the board. Now, because white has the 2 b's, that means this bishop on f1 is always going to have great scope down the road in this position. Now, the reason I mention this move is because in this position after knight to e2, the best move according to the computer is to sack the bishop with bishop takes pawn. If white were to take, you have knight to f3 check, forking the king and the rook. So white will simply take this knight on d4. And now after bishop d5, white is still much better, but there's one fundamental difference here, which is that in this position, Black still has 2 pawns for the knight, but much more importantly, Black keeps his 2 b's, or the bishop pair, on the board to contest all the diagonals that white wants with his b's. So white is so much better here, but I actually think objectively this gives Black much better practical chances to try and save the game. Instead, we got this position after knight b3 takes and knight d2, and now Gukesh starts playing like a pure machine. He plays king takes knight here, a great move in this position. This is the absolute best move. If he were to take with the rook, there would be knight to e5 here, and suddenly this knight is forking. Knight to f3 is a massive threat, forking the 2 rooks and the king. And after rook g3, Black can sack the rook. And after takes, knight f3, king d1, and knight g5 here, computer actually thinks the position is about equal, simply because in this position after bishop g2 and knight e6, the b's are really not attacking any pawns. Black has no weaknesses whatsoever. So Gukesh takes with the king, brilliant move here. Now we get the move knight to e5, a logical move from Ding trying to go for the fork, and now we get knight to d4, another superb move. Now, when I was actually doing my commentary, this is a move that I did not actually think was the correct move. I thought rook to c3 with the idea of playing something like bishop to d4 down the road to pin the knight on e5 was a little bit more natural, but the computer agrees with Gukesh that knight d4 is the absolute best move, primarily because even though it's not a pure bastion or blockade with the knight on d4, the black knight does not have any squares to jump to. So we get rook to d8, and now we have king to e2 here. Gukesh doing his best impersonation of Hikaru, playing Le Bon Cloud. But the main issue for Black is that you can't really push these pawns on the queen side, and White has a lot of time to try and activate the bishops. Now, to add a more insult to injury, let's take a look at the clock here. Gukesh is up 25 minutes on the clock here. We're only on move 27. Ding has to make 13 moves in 17 minutes with no increment per move here. He is in dire straits at this point, and it's going to be very difficult to get to time control. So we get rook to h2 being played here, and now Gukesh plays bishop g2, a nice developing move, stopping the threats on the second rank. No kebabs here, and now we get a6 being played. Gukesh plays the move b3 here, and this is a move that I actually didn't understand at the time, but I think is a very strong move here. I thought that one of the ideas for white is to try and go knight b3 and knight to c5 or knight a5, whereas b3 takes away any of these ideas with maneuvering the knight. However, what Gukesh actually wants to do when he plays b3 is at some point down the road, just to illustrate, he wants to play something like knight to f3, where after takes, this pawn on b2 will never be under attack because the priest on g7 can't touch the pawn, and white will go on to win the game. So it's a very deep conceptual idea here to play b3. Not only do you take the pawn off the dark square, but it also stops knight c4 as well. So after b3, we get the move rook to d7 being played, and now Gukesh plays the move rook c to c1. Here Ding plays move king e7. As you can tell from the time situation, it's very difficult here to play. Time is ticking down. There are no obvious moves for Ding here, and at this point it's looking like Gukesh is on his way to a big victory. So we get king e7, Gukesh plays rook d1, and now Ding spends nearly 5 minutes before playing this move king 8, taking him all the way down to 1 minute and 50 seconds, needing to make 9 moves in a minute 50. So he has 12 to 13 seconds per move. At this point, frankly, I don't think anybody in the world is going to save this position with black. If Ding had played king 8 very quickly here, I think he would have had better chances, but he takes too much time, and now we get the move bishop g3. Ding plays rook h5, and here we get a very nice move knight to f3. Now, one thing that's very important to note, especially when your opponent has no time on the clock, is in many cases finding a move where your opponent doesn't have an instant reply versus finding the best move makes a huge difference. Knight f3, I'm not sure if it's the absolute best move, but I love it from a practical standpoint, because if you go bishop f4 guarding the pawn, black gets to play rook h4, bishop e3, rook h2, and burn off 2 moves in 2 seconds, and just like that, he only has to make 6 moves to get to move 40 and get more time on the clock. So when you go knight f3, this is obviously not the move that is most natural or what you're expecting, and it means that now you have to go deep into the tank. And here Ding spends 6 seconds, or deep in the tank you can't with 1 minute 50 seconds, so you have to trust your intuition, and Ding's intuition fails him here when he trades the knights. Now what's amazing about this is that if black were to trade the rooks and go knight to d7 here, white is still in the long term winning, but from the practical human standpoint, I think that it's very difficult to win in this position, because after the best computer move, which is king to e3, black can play like knight c5, b4, and knight e6. The pawn on g5 is still weak. It's going to take a lot of work. Bishop h4, there might be a bishop c3 or bishop f8 idea, and yes, according to the 3500 or 3700 level stockfish, it's winning, but in human practice, I think from a practical standpoint, there are very good chances for black to draw the game. But when you mismanage your time and you get too low on the clock, the way Ding has done in games 1 and games 3, it's gonna bite you at some point. You're not going to be able to consistently get away with it, and here is where it finally hurts Ding in this game. So we get knight takes f3, and Gukesh plays king takes f3, another excellent move, the best move in the position. Worth noting that if black were to trade the rooks first and take on f3 here, now bishop f3 would be the best move, attacking the rook, because if you take the pawn, there's bishop h4, and when you move the rook, it's spaghetti-o time, there's rook d8, checkmate. But in this position, after knight takes f3 here, you do not take with the king, because if you take with the king here, now black can grab the juicer, or sorry, you don't take with the bishop here, not the king. I'm forgetting what I was saying, because after rook takes g5, takes rook to d1. Now black can slide the king to c8, and when you go bishop h4, it's an empty check on d8, because the king is on c8, not e8, so check king c7, and black is actually not even worse here. So king takes f3 is played, the absolute best move, and now Ding plays the move bishop to d4 here, and Gukesh finds rook h1, an excellent move, trying to trade off another set of rooks in this position. Now, with only a minute on the clock to make 5 moves here, there's no way that Ding is going to survive this, frankly. He's not a bullet player, certainly, or at least most of the time he isn't. He doesn't have obvious moves, and he ends up playing the move rook takes g5 with 9 seconds on the clock, spending 50 seconds. Here he is going to get flagged or resign the game. Computer wants rook takes h1, and after takes, bishop c5, king e2. White is much better here, because now you've kept the 2 b's alive. You can play rook h8 and rook b8. Black can't really get rid of these pawns on e4 and g5, and technically speaking, the game will end soon. But Ding plays rook takes g5 here, 9 seconds on the clock for 5 moves. He's not going to make time control. We got bishop to h3, and here f5 is played, and we get to move bishop f4. Ding plays rook h5, and now Ding resigns after playing this move rook to h5, and the reason is that here white can sack the bishop with bishop takes pawn, and if you take with a juicer, you lose the rook. If you take the rook on h1, bishop takes d7 is check, and after takes rook h1, white is up a tower on h1 here and will win in a few moves if you don't resign. So after rook to h5, Ding resigns before Gukesh can play bishop takes f5, and that means that we have a new ball game after 3 games in this World Championship match. The match is now tied by a score of 1.5 to 1.5 as we head to the first rest day of the match. So what to say? For Ding, it has to be pretty heartbreaking. He actually was out-prepared again, but managed to survive. In fact, was a little bit better, perhaps, if he hadn't blundered with rook to h5. So it's maybe heartbreaking on the one hand. On the other hand, however, or actually, I don't know if he resigned or he got flagged. He might have gotten flagged. Regardless, he would have lost in the position. But the point is that for Gukesh here, this is a massive win here. It's an epic win for Gukesh because with this win, he is now tied. He has all the confidence on his side. Everything is looking up for him. So he's got to be feeling confident about his chance here. He should be pretty happy. I think for Ding, it's hard to judge where his mind is at. We'll hear what he says in the press conference, but certainly at the end of the day, if you had asked him before the match, would he be happy with a score tied after 3 games, having had 2 blacks and 1 white? I think his answer would be that yes, he would be happy, but the way he's gotten there is probably not what he was hoping for. So it's definitely hard to judge where he's at. I would say from personal experience, when you play an event, you generally try to be very objective in terms of how you look at it. And for me, whenever I'm in a situation where I get the score that I was going to be happy with, that's how I look at it versus saying, okay, I won this game, lost that game, I should never have happened. If I get the score that I would like to have, then that's how I sort of rationalize the situation. So we'll see if Ding can rationalize it that way. There is a rest day tomorrow, so Ding will come back and play with the white pieces in the 4th game. But a very exciting game. Definitely, it's a new ball game. The game is back on here for Gukesh. All the fans in India going crazy. I think something like 150,000 were watching at some point. So the match is back on. We have a very exciting first couple of games. Anytime chess has decisive games, that is a good thing versus a bunch of draws. I do have a feeling that in this match, much like the last match between Nepo and Ding, we're going to continue to see a lot of decisive games. So it's going to be very exciting to watch as we move forward. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the 3rd game of the 2024 World Chess Championship being held in Singapore. If you are not already subscribed to this channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with more recaps after the 4th game of this match is played. But really exciting, so I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys all very soon. Have a great rest of your day. See you. Bye.